Believe it or not, there are many mortals who have an inclination to do good. They want to be good people and strive to have a virtuous path in life. But life itself corrupts them and limits their goals, or so some would tell you. And while us kindred are different and strive for other things such as power and domination, surely you think there must be one group of kindred who actually want to do good. Well, there was. See, there was a time when the major players in Kindred Knights were very different to what we imagine today. A group that are tiny, almost destroyed, considered naught but a bloodline in today's knights, were once one of the most mighty and powerful clans, rival to any other. I speak of the Salubri, the mystical healers and warriors of the old world. So, before I talk about anything else, I must speak of their most famous physical feature, their third eye, the one that sits upon their forehead and that opens shortly after their embrace. This eye can look completely different to their natural ones, with the pupil taking on all sorts of bizarre shapes and the iris being any ridiculous colour you can imagine. It often fits the personality of the newly embraced, although it stays normal a lot more times than you would expect. This is something most of them tend to hide for obvious reasons. It is a clear breach of the Masquerade. Unfortunately, quite a lot of them don't care for the Masquerade anymore, for in recent years they have thrown themselves in with the Sabbat. But that is a topic for a little bit later. It would be quite confusing to explain it now, so ignore this detail for a moment until the history section. So, the goal of most Salubri, excluding those inside the Sabbat, is to achieve an enlightened state, one in which you no longer hunger for vitae, and you are able to step out into the sun again, something no one has ever provably been able to achieve. Ever. A mythical state known as Golconda. This is also supposedly the thing that opens their third eye. Despite the fact they all have it, yet none of them have provably been able to achieve it. It's more so a goal they will eternally strive for than something they actually live. They do, however, possess some rather unique abilities, something I'll go into more detail later, but they have the ability to heal others. They can heal a kindred's physical wounds, soothe the mind, and allow you to completely forgive yourself, so to speak. They let you accept an act that you have or are going to commit. That sounds minor at first, but you need to realize that us retaining our humanity is the only thing keeping us in check, the only thing keeping us as bastions of power, our humanity. So you can see how useful it truly is. Of course, them using such powers puts them at risk, massively, for one major reason. They must open their third eye to do so, though I'm not sure it needs to be visible, but what makes this an issue is that they will bleed from it. Some blood will weep from the eye, sometimes all of them depending on how hard this power is for them. Believe it or not, the thing that truly makes this an issue is that they are delicious. Let me explain. We kindred can smell the vitae of others, and when we hunger, the sight, or more often the smell of blood, makes us act differently. Some of us who are less formal might even lunge for it, or if we're hungry enough, we could lose control of ourselves entirely for a moment. Now, the blood of a Salubri is so strong and appetizing that even those who are fully sated will struggle to ignore it, let alone one who is hungry. This is their bane, as some see it. This, combined with their strive for Golconda, is why they always ask for permission before drinking from a mortal. They inform the mortal as best they can, often towing the line of the Masquerade. Now, some think they have tricked the mortal in this moment. They believe that the Salubri drains the very soul when they feed. And that is partly right, they do so. In fact, all of us do. This is the real reason we call it vitae. When we feed upon a mortal, we drain the blood, yes, but we sap at their very soul. It does come back, or so I've heard, so I don't put much stock into it affecting people. The reason people are suspicious of the Salubri is because theirs supposedly doesn't fully come back, Or rather, it's fractured, broken. The soul is there, but slightly shattered, able to be molded. And since the Salubri often command others, you can see how the suspicions are raised. Now then, to understand the other facts about the Salubri, you need context, so I think it is time to talk about their history. And so I shall start where I always do, with their antediluvian, Salot, who was very influential in the first city. It is said he was one of, if not the favourite of Cain himself, and were it not for his choice in friends, he might have ruled. See, he was very close to Malkav and Set. Keep in mind this was before Malkav truly went insane, and before any of Set's betrayals, well, his major ones. So when those two fell out of the limelight, they dragged Salot's reputation with them. But he didn't much care. He was more so interested in his ideas of philosophy, the idea that would become Golconda, and just before the first city fell, he left to achieve it himself. He was gone for quite some time. It took him 1,000 years or so. This was prehistory though, so take that as you will. When he came back, he had the third eye his clan were known for. Those he had embraced before his seclusion suddenly sprouted one of their own. What makes this more interesting is that there is an ancient Malkavian that claims Malkav gave him the third eye. Usually I dismiss the claims of a single kindred when it comes to these matters, but what this does explain, well, it makes a lot more sense than mystical clan-spreading Golconda, I'll put it that way. Now, many kindred loved Salot, I should note. Even with his wrongly previous reputation being pushed, his healing powers, combined with his virtuous path, made even non-Salubri seek the path of Golconda. He was righteous, he was regal, and he was holy. But some were starting to see the flaws in this. For a start, no trustworthy source has ever actually seen him in the sunlight, as he claims he can, and while he has never witnessed feeding upon anyone, he did spend a lot of time in seclusion. He also spent a lot of time in Asia, spreading his clan as far east as places like Tibet and China. He had many interactions with the kindred from there. That is something I wish to leave as a whole can for another day. Just know that everything you have probably heard about the kindred of the East is a complete and utter lie, including the name some have given you. But after all this, there started a little crack in his reputation. For one so virtuous, he had a bizarre obsession with one conflict, and desired to go to war. See, there is a bloodline of foul kindred known as the Bali, a group with connections with demons. At the time, Hakim and his clan were warring with them, but Salot thought he was taking too long to win, and so joined him in his holy war against them. To do this, he made a whole new caste of his clan focused on war instead of healing, who he sent to aid in this conflict. No one truly knows why he did this, why he was so obsessed with the Bali, but there is a rumor that Salot sired the first of their bloodline, that this whole cursed bloodline was in fact an offshoot of his clan. I don't believe it, but it's a very good story that explains just about everything. Now, people were getting suspicious about Salot at this time. If Golconda forbids lots of acts of violence, why was he ordering crusades? Perhaps in reality, this was just a cult of some kind. And just as people were theorizing and about to bring words and defamations, Salot was diablerized by Tremere. Just like that, out of nowhere. Some even say that Salot let it happen. People that were there said he had a smile on his face, even when it was turning to dust. Now many kindred started to debate what should be done about the Tremere and the Salubri at this time. Long story short, you know what happened. I was at some horrid debates I wished I did not take part in, where the kindred of Europe turned from loyalty to the Salubri to ordering their genocide by the hands of the Tremere. When the Malkavians turned, that was the final nail in the coffin, their closest allies condemning them. The Salubri who did survive did so in two ways. The first was fleeing Europe where this took place, to hide in places like Africa and Asia. The second was the rule of 7, a particularly bizarre rule which they kept for the longest time. The rule of 7 is quite simple. Their clan would only number in 7. Once they had achieved Golconda, or what they believed it to be, they would embrace a new one and teach them everything, only to then have their own childer diablerize them to start the circle over and over again. This was kept up for a few 100 years until one decided not to. He went through his sire's training, and after diablerizing him, said, "Sod this, I'm going to start my own clan." And so he started to embrace en masse, spreading across the world, but this time to achieve one goal: revenge. They wanted to destroy the Tremere and the Barley, all those who had betrayed them. And since the La Sombra and the Zamitzi were not involved, and had a faction of their own, well, you can see why this group joined them. The remaining 6, realizing that this pact was broken, went off and started doing their own thing. While some never did embrace again, some of them did, and they're the ones who are more sane, shall I say. Now then, it is time to discuss their powers, for unlike what many think, they do not have a discipline of their own, just unique ways of manifesting them. They simply have Auspex, Dominate, and Fortitude, but they use them in powers and ways I don't think anyone else can, unless you diablerize one of them. Up first is Auspex. Now they use this like most with this power do. They see beyond what one usually can, and have the likes of premonitions. That's something they're often known to do. But this is where their unique power, known as Obeya, comes into mind. This is their ability to heal the mind and free the soul, as I spoke about before. The ability to cleanse the soul and free it of a burden is mighty useful indeed. This one can even be used to help mortals as well. One Salubri I faced was a priest of a Sabbat pack. Unlike those around him, he didn't buy into the bullshit, however. He used his powers of manipulation and mind clearing to fully convince those in his pack that they were not the monsters they were becoming, but righteous crusaders against the dark. He made them think the horrid debauched acts they were committing solely for their own gratification were not only fine, but good, the right thing to do even, and those he knew he couldn't convince, he made sure they never knew it was happening. I couldn't help but respect him in the end, and so I kept him. He's still in my possession, staked and left underground, a worthy trophy of my conquests indeed. Next, they have Dominate, and this is actually needed so that their other powers can truly work. See, while they do use it like other clans do to control the minds of others, it is in this moment of control it's where they bring their effects onto others. If they wish to clear someone's mind, for example, they must first enter it and take control of it. Hence why they need to be skilled in Dominate, even though they might not know they actually are. In fact, I put money on saying some don't even think they have this ability. Some have even argued that they are as skilled in this discipline as the clan that mastered it, the Ventru. That's not true at all, but I will grant them the state of runner-up, for they can convince almost anyone to believe absolutely anything. The difference is they're actually a bit more subtle with it. The Salubri will convince you over time, perhaps taking years to mold you into the good little cultist they wish you to be, whereas a Ventru will simply decree it. Lastly, they have Fortitude, famously used by their warriors, though I think most of them class as that nowadays. They use this in the normal ways, such as toughening their own skin, but also in their power known as Valorum, their ability to heal others. They cannot heal themselves, nor can they mortals, but with this power they can make even the most foul of wounds heal in a moment. Perhaps the very rays of the sun can be gone with this. This is probably the power that has allowed them to stay alive for as long as they have. Even the few that are allowed into the Camarilla are kept around because of this power. I know of a local Salubri who's used as a healer in exchange for boons, one who calls herself Ghislaine, and she has made quite the name of herself. She has even become the primogen of the Salubri, despite being the only one where I live. This makes the title almost meaningless, but it is respected nevertheless. Many think the children of Salot strange, not just because of their physical altercation. Their abilities are foreign and unnatural, their ideas flawed and unproven. But what we can all agree on is their dedication to whatever goal they strive for. While most in the modern knights are told to fall in line like the other Sabbat around them, many still feel the call to Golconda, the call to be better than the kindred around them. It is only their mistreatment by everyone else that has pulled them to be as dark as the rest of us. Thank you for listening to my tales. I'm the Ashspawn. Feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe. It really does mean a lot to me. But, till next we meet, fellow traveller, have a good day.